Alrighty guys, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about one of our favorite cartridges. It's a Western hunting icon. It's going to be the 7mm Remington Magnum. And in today's video, we're going to go over some typical loadings that we can find from factory, as well as some other loadings that fall within what's considered normal for the 7mm mag, as well as some that maybe borderline crazy, maybe borderline what people think is possible. But we'll get into that here in a minute. So hope you enjoy.
Alrighty, so for our first factory option, we got these Winchester 150 grainers. They have them clocked at 30-90 feet per second. Not too bad of a round here. Still going over that $3,000 mark. Maybe not as hot as what you can load it to. I mean, once you get your hands on it, hand loading, for sure you can get loading it quicker around that 3,200 feet a second mark, but it's not a bad option. Next, we got these Hornady American Whitetails with the 139. If I remember right, these are the interlocks. Yep, these are interlocks. Those ones are going 3150. Still not too bad. Very quick, very fast. Not going to be too bad, so I'll shoot anything dead.
And here we're going to start to notice a trend with these bullets right around that 150 to 140 grain mark. They're all going to be going quite similar in velocity. These Federals here going 3110 is what they say is their average for that 150 grain bullet. And then the Remington just below that is going to be 3175 with a 140 grain bullet. Now, they do offer core locks in 150 grain, and I believe there is a heavier option around the 170 grain mark from Remington.
Federal also has a 175 grain option in some of the round nose varieties. Now, if we're kind of looking at these three, there's one not pictured here, and that's more of like a hand load, more like your, not necessarily factory, but it's like your factory plus. I would say hand load from Choice Ammunition, if you want to talk about the first one from them.
Yes, so Choice Ammunition has a few options. They have the 170 grain ELDX and the 195 grain EOL. Both of those are great bullets. One is going to be that Hornady ELDX, and they have that going 2889. So 2,889 feet per second. With that 175 is a fairly realistic mark to hit. And then that 195 grain EOL is about the heaviest bullet that you can find in the 7mm caliber. You might find some others that are a touch heavier, but I think that's as heavy as it gets.
There may be some specialty outfitters out there, maybe get that 200 grain mark. But yeah, those 195s, if you're really wanting something really heavy for your 7 mag and you have a fast twist barrel to be able to handle it. I mean, there's some great factory barrels out there that have some faster twists, such as Browning being one of them. They have a 1-in-8 twist for their 7 mags. Fierce has a 1-in-8.5. And I think most of them are at least 1-in-9 or quicker at this point.
Yes, any more rifle companies have gotten away from that traditional 1-in-10 twist in their 7 mags. I don't know of very many that still have that as their standard. Most have switched to either that 1-in-9-inch twist or that 1-in-8, 8.5, somewhere in that mark, just because it keeps the round a little more modern, keeps it kept up a little more. And obviously that 195 grain EOL going 2800 is going to be a great round, not only for hunting, but also out at extended ranges for target practice and things of that aspect.
Well, and I guess with those other like Browning's faster twist, is it really opened up the 7 mag to where it's still like a factory plus. It's like you're still not limited as a hand loader. And where we're focused on that reloading, we're going to really focus on some of those other options. And one thing with the 7 mag that from the specs from Sammy is it's at 6,200 PSI. Now most Magnum cartridges these days, and even the 270 Winchester is listed at 65,000 PSI for maximum average pressure.
So keep that in mind as you're reloading. It's important to look and watch for pressures, and we'll get into that here because a lot of times when hand loading, the book might say one thing, but you might hit pressure at that max load. So just be aware as you are hand loading that the pressures may vary between rounds. Alrighty guys, so here is the first bullet that we use while we're hand loading for the 7mm Remington Magnum. It is the 120 grain Nosler ballistic tips. Now, we noticed a trend with most factory loadings is that there's not really much to be had in the manner of lighter bullets. So this is a great bullet. It's super fast. It's got flat trajectories within your hunting ranges. It's a really great bullet to use. We use it for elk, deer, antelope, everything that we have out west. The biggest thing to keep in mind with these is your shot placement. Obviously, where it's not a bonded bullet, it's going to come apart a little bit more. But if you keep that in mind as you get out and you're hunting, you can be very, very successful with these rounds.
This particular load, it's going about 3,400 feet a second out of the muzzle. So it's very fast, very flat, shoots great, and we're going to go over the group size here real quick. Alrighty guys, this is a group. As you can see, it measures 0.699 inches for that 3-shot group with those 120 ballistics, going 3,400 feet a second. Now that you can't really complain too much about. Get experience shooting this round. If you load it to this, you're gonna know where it goes. It's going to be a lower recoil option compared to some of the heavier bullets. You don't have as much, but at the same time, like, pick your shot, be responsible, and yeah, this particular combination just does really well out of this rifle that we have here in 7 Mag.
Alrighty, so here you're going to start to notice a trend on the lighter end of bullets. We prefer the Nosler ballistics. Now, these here are the 140 grain variety. Now, there are two different types of bullets here. We have the ballistic silver tip, which just has a little bit of a coating on it that's kind of an anti-fouling, and it helps lubricate the bullet as it goes down the barrel.
Yep, it's just an aftermarket coating that Winchester throws on these bullets. You'll notice on their silver tip line of ammunition that they have, they get the bullets from Nosler, they throw the coating on it, and then ship it back to Nosler, from what we've found when talking to the Nosler reps at different expos we've gone to.
And these, out of my particular rifle, are going anywhere from 3,200 feet a second to 3,280, 3,290, depending on the powder that we are using. I have a preference, and we'll kind of get to what that load looks like here in just a minute. So here is that group from the 140 grain Nosler ballistics. Now, it measures just over a 1/2 inch, which is pretty average for what we're getting for this load, going 3,250, so 3,250 feet a second. This is what I use typically for hunting elk, deer. This fall, we may be taking it out for some antelope, just kind of depending on what we get for tags. Okay. Alrighty guys, so you may notice here that this is a little bit heavier than what we have been traditionally using in the 7mm Remington Magnum. These are the 180 grain eldm bullets from Hornady. These are their match bullet with a super high BC to help fight not only bullet drop and wind deflection, but also to give you the advantage for shooting out at longer ranges. This BC is going to be significantly better and more
aerodynamically efficient for those guys who are also car guys. I mean, we're bullet guys, gun guys, we also like vehicles. It'd be like comparing with those 140, 120 ballistics being a Camaro to this bullet being more like a Corvette or Mustang, Ford GT, Challenger, Viper. Any comparison you want to make there, that's going to be your big difference there. You still got the horsepower behind it. It's just one's more sleek and slim and does better in the wind.
Exactly. So what we're going to take a look at here is not only the performance of this via velocities as well as bullet drops, like we have done in our previous videos, but we're also going to go over whether or not a 7mm Remington Magnum can actually stabilize these bullets.
Alright, so here's the group here. As you can see, like, we have a 4-shot group measuring just over that inch mark, just a little bit over MOA, and where those first 3 shots, how we have it measured, is a bit over 3/4 MOA. That 4-shot, it was a bit warm. Could be getting the barrel a little bit loosened out there. but overall it's not too bad. Can't complain one bit. This will still take those longer shots, and with a little bit more refinement it could do a little bit better.
Exactly. And one thing we'll notice here is that the holes are round. There is no keyholing. The bullets are stable. Alrighty guys, so here we have our chart, and it's going to be very similar to what we had for the 270 Winchester chart. As we see here, it is color coded. The 120 grain nozzle ballistics are going to be the pink color, and those have a muzzle velocity of 3,400 feet a second with a BC of 0.417. Now it's a G1 BC. The green is going to be the 140 grain nozzle ballistics, and those are going an average of 3,250. This is my hunting load, and it has a G1 BC, excuse me, of 0.485. So those two, they're pretty close. Relatively speaking, though, they are super low compared to that 180 grain eldm, which we see there in blue, going 2850 with a BC of 0.796. Now, the group we previously showed you was with the new load that we've done since we created this chart. This chart needs updated just a little bit, but that load was going 3,005 feet a second on the average, so it's significantly faster than this. But with this old velocity, we should get a good enough idea as to how this round will behave out at range. So first things first here, we're going to talk about energy.
First off, energy. Everyone wants to compare energies, 120s, 140s, 180s. You can see in the graphs there how they start out, but also in the table there. That 180, it starts with the most amount of energy and maintains it. 120s, they aren't doing too bad. Here at 5,000 feet, everyone's looking at that like 1,800, 1,500 foot mark for elk, which that 1,500 foot mark, foot pounds of energy, that's not happening until, I'll give it about 550 yards, which for most people, that's well within their hunting ranges. You're not going to be too disappointed with any animals that are harvested within that. You're using that 140, you're getting out past 600 yards for under that 1,500, and that 180, just for looking at it and just for comparison's sake, since we are talking about hunting and using these heavier bullets, 1,000 yards is where we're seeing that up here at 5,000 feet of elevation, where it's hitting that 1,551 mark.
So realistically here, all three of these would be great options for your next hunt. However, that 180 grain bullet is going to pack a heavier punch on your elk, on your deer. I don't know necessarily if you would want to use it on an antelope, but hey, if you do, good on you. But as we can see, that 180 grain bullet is going to be effective out to 1,000 yards. Now, most guys hunting don't want to go past 400, 500. So with that in mind, all three would be a very good and viable option for hunting at range.
Yeah, and if you're wanting that Magnum cartridge, not as much recoil, but still being able to say, you shoot a Magnum. Yeah, but I shoot Magnum. That 120 ballistic will still give you that 400 yards. Great working, and as long as you can place your shot, you're not going to be disappointed one bit with it.
Alrighty, so the next thing we're going to get into here is our bullet drops. Now, we have this measured in MOA, or minute of angle. Now, one thing to keep in mind with this is that this data is set for 5,000 feet in elevation, where we are at out west. So, taking a look here at it, it's very competitive at the start. We don't really see any deviation in the bullet drops until about 1,300 yards. So just taking a look here at everything at 1,100 yards, so 1,100 yards, the 120 grain ballistics and the 140 grain ballistics are going to be roughly the same in bullet drop. But as we get further out there, towards the 1,300 yard mark, 1,400 yard mark, that 180 grain eldm really takes off and it stays flat and maintains itself because of that great BC. Now, as we go down further onto the chart, we see at 2,000 yards, we're only at 68.4 minutes of drop. Now, realistically, not many people are going to say, oh, hey, let me take my 7 mag out to 2,000 yards. But should you want to do it, I would say that 68.4 minutes of angle of drop is very competitive.
Lastly, we're going to kind of talk about velocity. Velocity is what makes bullets work on impact on animals. As we can see here, there seems to be crossover around that 600-yard mark up here at 5,000 feet in elevation. That's about where you're going to see all those bullets. The 120s has run out of steam a little bit more and is dropping a little bit quicker. This is more showing the function of that BC. 140s are doing good, but that 180 with that higher BC, even though it started off about 600 feet a second slower than those 120s, it starts to take off and really has that velocity. Shows up in energy, shows up in everything, and we're going to cut to what we've been messing with on the 7 mag in those 180s.